Hello everyone, no one of consequence here, back again with a new video. I released a video on this Rob Kuntz message a couple of days ago. However, it contained a lot of video clips and other material and ran for over 30 minutes, so I decided to create a new video which eliminates all that and tries to get straight to the point. I have added a small amount of new material as well, so this video is not entirely just a rehash of the old one. So first, again, just to establish who Rob Kuntz is, for those who may not know, here are some extracts from his Wikipedia page, and I've highlighted a few lines. You can see he's best known for his contributions to various D&D related materials. Going down a little bit, you can see that he was hired in 1975 as the 6th employee of TSR, and at the bottom, because of Kuntz's imaginary play of his character, Gygax awarded him co-DM status for Gygax's original Greyhawk home campaign. So what you can see, Kuntz has been around almost from the very beginning. And here is the message that Kuntz released late last week. Again, I'm not going to read it out loud. You've probably already seen it by now. But if not, I'll give you a moment to pause the video and read it for yourself. Alright, so as you can see from reading through this passage, Rob Kuntz is obviously very angry. But the question is why? Well, to understand why, we first need some background. To mark the 50th anniversary of Dungeons & Dragons, WotC announced plans to publish this book, the making of original Dungeons & Dragons from 1970 to 77. It was to include handwritten notes, typewritten manuscripts, and basically everything up to and including the earliest version of the Dungeons & Dragons game. Now, the person pictured here is Jason Tondro, who was put in charge of the entire project. The book was released in late June of this year, and here's Jason Tondro again writing in the book's preface. He says, in the 1970s, historical war gamers in America were predominantly white middle-class men. It isn't surprising that they would dub a class of soldiers the fighting man. So he is complaining because in original D&D, the character class is called a fighting man, and thus presumably excludes women. So for context, this is a rule book and the specific passage that Tondro is referring to. This was published in 1974, and here you can see the whole fighting man thing that he's talking about. So what Tondro says is accurate, but I do not believe any harm was intended. In those days, and long before that, the term man and mankind was understood to mean everyone. So at any rate, why might Rob Kuntz be angry at Tondro for criticizing this book in the first place? Well, if you look closely on the title page of the book, you can see that Rob Kuntz is given playtest credit. So Tondro is attacking a product that Kuntz was involved in helping develop from the very beginning of the game's release. So at any rate, when did TSR address this oversight regarding the term fighting men and change the language to be more inclusive regarding women? Well, only 2 years later, in 1976. This is an article which appeared in Dragon Magazine number 3, which was published in October of that year. So as you can see, TSR moved relatively quickly to address the issue. And I say relatively quickly when you consider how publishing worked back in those days, not to mention all the other projects that TSR had going on at the time. So, going back to that preface, again, Tondro writes, but when, in the pages of Greyhawk, the description of the Queen of Chaotic Dragons includes a dig at women's lib, the misogyny is revealed as a conscious choice. So for context, this is the rule book and the specific text entry which Tondro is referring to. The very last line is the one which Tondro cites in the preface. So why might Rob Kuntz be upset an attack on the material found in this book? Well, Rob Kuntz is the co-author of this real book, along with Gary Gygax. Personally, I believe that whoever wrote that particular passage about women's lib was simply making a clumsy attempt at a joke, and that no real harm was intended. It's a throwaway one-liner aimed at contemporary to them cultural movement. Anyway, moving on to another segment of the preface, Tondro writes, the cultural appropriation of original D&D ranges from the bewildering, like naming every 6th level cleric a llama. I'll just stop there a moment. For context, this is the rule book and the specific text entry that Tondro was referring to, and I've highlighted it there on the far right. Remember, as we saw earlier, Rob Kuntz was given playtest credit in this book. So that, again, explains why he would be angry at an attack upon it. But what I really want to point out here is Tondro's hypocrisy regarding this cleric leveling table. Apparently, only use of the term llama gets him in a twist. But he doesn't seem to mind that lower level clerics are given titles like vicar, curate, or bishop. And just as an aside, Tondro is incorrect when he says in the preface that 6th level clerics were given the title of Lama. As you can see, it's actually at 7th level that they get that title. But going back to the preference, Tondro continues. Gods, demigods, and heroes, not reprinted in this book, includes game statistics for sacred figures revered by more than 1 billion players around the world, where players expected to fight Vishnu, one of the principal deities of Hinduism, kill him, and loot his +3 sword of demon slaying. Well, to answer his question, all you have to do is simply look at the book he is criticizing. So for context, here is the rule book and the specific text entry that Tondro is referring to. And again, note that Rob Kuntz is a co-author of this rule book along with Jim Ward. So here is yet another project that Kuntz was involved with being attacked by Tondro. So much so that this book wasn't even included in the Origins of D&D book. But let's address Tondro's criticism about characters fighting and leading deities. This passage is from the foreword of the same book. It's not the entire foreword, but it's the part I want to highlight. It says, this volume is something else also. Our last attempt to reach the Monty Hall DMs. Let me just stop right there in case you don't know what that means. Monty Hall was the name of a well-known game show host back then, and the game show was called Let's Make a Deal. And in early Dungeons & Dragons especially, the term was used to describe DMs who were too generous in giving out treasure and experience points to their players. So back to the foreword. It is our last attempt to reach the Monty Hall DMs. Perhaps now some of the giveaway campaigns will look as foolish as they truly are. This is our last attempt to delineate the absurdity of 40-plus level characters. When Odin, the Allfather, has only 300 hit points, who can take a 44th level lord seriously? So in reality, TSR is calling out DMs who allow their players to become so powerful that they would actually have a chance at defeating a deity. This means that the answer to Tondro's question is no. The authors of this book did not intend for player characters to fight deities and loot their belongings. But just to drive home the point, this book is the successor to that Gods, Demigods, and Heroes book, and this one was published in 1980. I've highlighted this particular comment written by Gary Gygax in the book's foreword. He says, thus, addition of these deities and demigods does not imbalance the campaign. Furthermore, characters who become a match for them are obviously to be ranked amongst their number, no longer suitable for daily campaign interaction, but to be removed to another place and plane and treated accordingly. So what Gygax is saying in so many words is that any player character that is actually powerful enough to challenge a deity should be removed from the campaign and added to the pantheon of that campaign. But to continue, this passage was written by the book's editor, Lawrence Schick. He says, in talking about the book, open it up. Inside there are lots of pictures next to sets of stacked statistics. It must be just like the monster manual. There, that was easy. Now that we know what it is, we know what to do with it, right? Wrong. So first he admits that this book does in fact look a lot like the monster manual. However, he goes on to say that this book is not intended to be used like the monster manual. He says, Deities and demigods may resemble monster manual, and in fact does include some monsters. However, the purpose of this book is not to provide adversaries for player characters. So there it is, the final nail in the coffin. Clearly, the original authors of D&D never intended for player characters to actually fight deities and loot their belongings. So in summary, the things which Jason Tondro complains about regarding early D&D seems to me to be a lot of pearl clutching over issues, and even non-issues, that no one was even thinking about back then. And as for his complaint asking if PCs were actually intended to fight and loot deities, that can be refuted through a simple reading of the book in question, as we just saw. In the promotional video for this book, Tondro says that he was playing D&D back in those days when the original rulebooks were still in effect. But apparently, the things he is criticizing now didn't seem to bother him too much back then, because he obviously didn't stop playing the game. In fact, in the video, he says he has fond memories of those days. The truth is, he is engaging in presentism, which is the judging of people in the past and their works through the lens of his own, and by extension WotC's, modern-day values. So in light of all this, I can certainly understand Rob Kuntz's anger here. He is watching people who had no hand in the creation of the game sanctimoniously pick apart every line of text, just looking for something to be outraged over. And in some cases, like the cleric-level title list, it is only selective outrage. Then, after they've looted the corpses of the older editions of the game, they crow about how much better they've made it for today. So in closing, I absolutely support Rob Kuntz, and I wish him success in his future endeavors. And as for the people at WotC, I think they would do well to pause a moment and reflect on this quote. We are like dwarves sitting on the shoulders of giants. We see more, and things that are more distant than they did, not because our sight is superior or because we are taller than they, but because they raise us up and by their great stature add to ours. John of Salisbury in the year 1159. Alright, well that's all I have for now. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button. Leave a comment, let me know what you think. If you haven't yet, subscribe to the channel. Please share the video if you can, and anything you can do to help support the channel, I appreciate it. Thanks again. Bye for now.
The greatest adventure is what lies